Well, studio, we welcome now Mandy Gunasekara, former EPA Chief of Staff in the Trump administration. Hey, Mandy.
Hey, Gerard. Good to be with you.
Thanks for coming on. So, man, we've been talking about the debate coming up tonight. It is kind of a political junkies Christmas, I guess you could call it. We're looking forward to that and just trying to handicap what to expect. What do you think?
Yeah, well, I think coming into it, certainly all the pressure is on Joe Biden. I imagine you've been looking at and maybe even discussing some of the same polls that came out this morning and fairly recently, but they show that there's been this big momentum shift in favor of President Trump. There's actually the real clear politics national average has shown the largest lead for Trump. In the past 3 months, he's actually up by 2 solid points. And again, the national poll is a snapshot of the big picture. And then looking into some of the specific states, the swing states, 6 in particular, that Biden carried the last go round, are leaning more and more heavily towards Trump. And there's one more I'll mention. There was a Quinnipiac poll that showed 73% of the people who were polled will be tuning into the debate tonight. And within the independents that were polled, 10% favored Trump over Biden. So Biden really needs to shift the conversation if he doesn't want to experience an absolute political shellacking later on this year.
You know, Mandy, I have been watching those polls, but the one that got my attention here over the last day is the polling guru Nate Silver, who came out. He's pretty dead on with his predictions and his polling and his data analysis. He came out and said, yeah, Trump's got a 66% percent chance of winning the election, and that's a significant increase from his last analysis. 65.7% chance to reach the required 270 electoral votes is what Mr. Silver's saying. So that's consistent with all those other polls, I think, that you're discussing. I agree with you, and get your take on this. This is Donald Trump's to lose, is kind of the way I'm seeing it. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what Joe Biden's going to try and do is get him to act out in an aggressive manner or try to talk over him. Now, again, this truly is Trump going into a 3 versus 1 situation. You have the 2 CNN hosts that have a history of saying and exposing their anti-Trump bias alongside Joe Biden. And, you know, the structure, too, there's no live audience. They can mute his mic when they want to. So I do think the 3 of them will be working together to try and get President Trump to react emotionally. And then the best thing for Joe Biden would be if President Trump does that, and then the media is focusing on President Trump being angry or irrational or playing into that insurrection narrative that they tried to use the last go round, or they established early in 2021. Now, for President Trump, he's going to be focusing on how things were so much better under him from a domestic perspective, but also an international perspective. So I think the way that you say it, Gerard, it's a good way to think about it. It's Trump's to lose. He really is set up well going into this. But if you've been listening to him talking on a number of different podcasts and shows and even some of the rally speeches, he's been trying to shift expectations, saying, you know, Joe Biden, he's been around this game for a long time. He's not that bad of a debater, just so that expectations are shifted a little bit. The left is really trying to lower them, and President Trump is rightfully trying to say, hey, this isn't something that anyone should just sign up for. I'm going to think critically about this, prepare for this, and expose the problems that he has caused for so many Americans over the past few years.
Well, and that's a great point. So will Mr. Biden, will he attempt to focus on his record? Because I think Mr. Trump could. That's viewed by the majority of Americans as positive. People remember what it was like during his term. Biden doesn't really have a lot of positives to run on here. I mean, they try to spin stuff about the economy. They rarely talk about the border and don't talk a lot about foreign policy because they hadn't fared very well there. Is he going to focus more, you think, on here's what I'm going to do for you in the future?
Yeah, I do think that's what he will try to do, or he'll just straight up lie. I mean, the left gets away and the Democrats get away with straight up lying to the American people. The fact checkers will probably be noticeably absent regarding things that President Biden says, and will try to spin things as inconsistent on for anything that President Trump may actually say. So there's a bias for everyone to be aware of as well. But yeah, I think you're right. And what the projections, people who really have their ear to the ground are surrounding this debate are saying is that Joe Biden is going to once again try to focus on what he will do. He may even try to reinvigorate the narrative that he's going to bring Americans back together once again, the great uniter, as he promised to be, leading up to the 2020 election. But I think most Americans are just looking around saying, look, things are not great. I will believe my lion eyes, as the Democrats may characterize them, and see that if we had a different leader in the White House, that this country could actually be on a path towards growth. The American people could be feeling safe and optimistic, but instead we've got this current situation, which largely tying back to the border, that's such an important topic. It's led to an influx of lost safety, lost security, and there's been some really high profile tragic incidences that really bring this point home.
Yeah. The Israel Hamas war, Mandy, it seems like Biden has got to walk a tightrope there, right? I mean, his party, his base of support is fractured on this issue.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, his base of support on this issue, they were outside the White House a couple of weeks ago, or maybe it was last week. I kind of lose track of time, but they were the ones out there, flying Palestinian flags and chanting things like "Back to America" and really vandalizing historic monuments right around the White House in a very aggressive manner. That is the base of Joe Biden's support and who he is really influenced by when it comes to this international policy, especially when it involves Israel. And you're right, though. He will try to walk a fine line, but it's really hard for him because
Yeah.
a lot of Jewish Americans are feeling really betrayed, and rightfully so, by Joe Biden leaning into the Palestinian rhetoric that is very anti-Semitic, very anti-Israel, and undermines one of our most important allies in the entire world.
Yeah. Why in the world can't we get the Jewish community to vote Republican? Why don't they see that the Democrats aren't really their friend?
Well, it's interesting you say that because I'm actually, I've formed, it's an under the radar coalition, but I call it Team Hollywood and Team DC. And by virtue of another podcast I do, The World According to Ben Stein, I've gotten to know a lot of the Hollywood based Jewish community. And there are so many of them that have been frustrated. And here's something really important one of them told me recently. They will no longer be choosing ideology over their existence. And that is a feeling that is prevalent among Jewish communities. So I've been working on creating a coalition, connecting them to conservative Jewish communities here in Washington, D.C. to try and help spread that message amongst Jewish Americans that historically have voted Democrat, but they're starting to see the light that the Democrat Party has not only left them, but is willing to leave them for dead, especially if they find themselves somewhere out in the Middle East.
Yeah. All right. So your prediction, and not so much who's going to win the debate, because as you know, that's highly subjective, and both sides are going to claim victory. That's pretty typical. But here's the question for you. You know that all the polling organizations are going to conduct polls right after the debate. Does Mr. Trump get a boost? Does Mr. Biden get a boost? Does it just stay the same?
Ooh, it's hard for me not to look at this with rose-colored glasses, especially when it comes to President Trump. But I think if President Trump controls his emotion and he goes in the way that he's been preparing, he's going to come out on top. And the momentum that we've already seen swinging his way will continue to boost polls towards President Trump's favor. And one more thing that's really important is the shifting dynamics among the minority communities. The Hispanic community and the Black community have also been shifting their party allegiances and really coming around in support of Trump. So I think President Trump will get another boost that will carry him forward up until the days that voting begins.
Yeah, and of course, you know as well as I do that what really matters is those handful of so-called swing voters in about 4 states. That's where the presidential election is won or lost, and I hope that Mr. Trump's team has prepared him to really perform in a way that appeals to them and captures their vote, because that's how he's going to win the election. He did so well at that in 2016, as you know, and I hope he continues that. Mandy, always good talking to you. Appreciate you coming on, and I'm sure we'll talk some more probably after the debate and see how all this shakes out. Thanks a lot.
All right. Thanks, Gerard.
Folks, we're stepping aside for a break. We're in the Element Wealth studio. Coming